The Washington Commanders have absolutely made the right decision by having rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels lead the first team offense during the first day of their mandatory minicamp, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we should expect him to be the starting quarterback in preseason game one. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into today's episode of Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This podcast is free and available everywhere. Don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this episode. I am your host, David Harrison, credential member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for CommanderGameDay.com. And I'm here with you every Monday through Friday. And I greatly appreciate you for coming through today. Everydayers, I appreciate you for coming through every single day. On today's episode, Washington Commanders safety Darrick Forrest is back and healthy. And we caught up with him and linebacker Frankie Luvu after the mandatory minicamp practice on Tuesday. We also have 3 observations coming out of the first mandatory minicamp, including one about a player that didn't even practice, but there's still good news there. First, however, we are going to start with Washington Commanders giving quarterback Jayden Daniels the opportunity to lead the first team offense for the first time, which is the right decision, but does not necessarily mean that we should be jumping to the conclusion that he is officially becoming the team's starting quarterback. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And again, if you want to discuss this episode or anything else Washington Commanders related, all you got to do is reach out and text me using your handy dandy cell phone by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders today. Become an insider. From there, you can text me anything your little heart desires. I can text you everything that I see going on around the Washington Commanders. Questions, bonus content, conversations, all kinds of one-on-one interaction that goes beyond the program here with me. Again, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to get in on that action today. Jayden Daniels is your first team quarterback for the Washington Commanders, at least to start the mandatory minicamp period, but he's not necessarily the starting quarterback yet. And I'm going to explain. But before I explain that, I asked Dan Quinn ahead of Tuesday's practice and the opening of mandatory minicamp what it would take from Jayden Daniels for Dan Quinn to feel comfortable announcing Jayden as the team's starting quarterback. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I think what's important for Jayden and some of his teammates, especially the young guys coming in, as the reps are now happening, how are you doing in the execution of those, whether that's playing quarterback or tackle or nickel or safety. And so the expectation is just to see, how familiar he is with the concepts, making sure, all right, this one we want to keep, this one, we don't, in terms of, the things that he has the most comfort with. So I think just really running the system now. Obviously, you see us at the line of scrimmage some, we huddle some. So we put in a big package. Now it's about execution of it.
All right, so again, that was Washington Commanders head coach Dan Quinn answering my question about what he needed to see from Jayden Daniels to be comfortable naming him the starter, which is what everybody here on the outside of the team assumes is just a foregone conclusion. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's a matter of when it's going to happen. So he said some things specifically that really caught my attention. So what we saw Tuesday was Jayden Daniels' first opportunity to run the first team offense, at least in front of the media. So hear what Dan Quinn said about what he needs to see. First one is executing the reps they get. These reps are all extremely valuable. You don't just give somebody, and I've used the word give a couple of times here, but I want to clarify. Jayden Daniels has earned the opportunity to be the first team quarterback here on the first day of the mandatory minicamp. You go back to yesterday's episode where we kind of primed the mandatory minicamp period. And one of the things that I said that I was looking for this week was Jayden Daniels proving to everybody in attendance and everybody observing that he was ready to take the next step to become the Washington Commanders quarterback of the future and kind of take his place in that throne, as it were. Today is definitely a big step in that, taking those first team reps, extremely valuable reps. And then you move on to the next part, concept, familiarity. And that can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And certainly Dan Quinn, quarterback coach Tavita Pritchard, offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury are going to have their more nuanced look and more detailed look at what concept familiarity looks like for the Washington Commanders and for Jayden Daniels. But from my vantage point on the sideline during practice, there are moments in the practice that I look at him and say, this is a kid who understands what they're trying to do on offense. And he demonstrates that by knowing where his teammates are going to be, especially in specific situations like extending plays. There's one play specifically where Jayden Daniels extended the play, got away from the pass rush, rolled to his right, but he threw left, and he did so with anticipation. It wasn't just a player who's standing there to his left and he's standing there in an isolated spot in the open part of the field. Although those opportunities are great when they happen, this is a player who, as Jayden Daniels is getting ready to throw the ball, the player is breaking to his right, Jayden Daniels left, and Jayden hits him uncovered from the defender. That is familiarity with the concept. That is two players, receiver and a quarterback. Actually, I think it was tight end Zach Ertz. Don't quote me on that, but I believe it was tight end Zach Ertz. Two players on the same page, understanding that as a Washington Commanders player, when the quarterback is scrambling, with the defense in the position that it is, with me in the position that I'm in relation to the players around me, here's what I'm supposed to do. And to the receiver, I'm supposed to break right, uncover from my defender. The quarterback, understanding that, can throw with that anticipation, and it worked beautifully. A very, very, very solid play. Only probably about a 4-yard gain, all said and told. I mean, there's no tackling, so it's two-hand touch, right? So the player can't break a tackle and get extra yak. But what you see in that little nuance of a play is an understanding of both players of this is what we do as an offense in this situation. Designed runs. There were designed runs that you come through, and when the ball is snapped, you can't tell, boom, right off the bat, they're designed runs. They're designed well, and they're executed well to where you don't realize it's a designed run until the quarterback is taken off. In fact, Jayden Daniels executed and the offensive line executed a designed quarterback run at one point, and another media member actually had to come up to me and say, hey, was that a designed run, do you think, or did he just decide to take off? And I said, here's why it was a designed run. When you look at the snap of the ball, you can see center Tyler Biadasz and right guard Sam Cosmi work in tandem to clear the passageway for Jayden Daniels. Honestly, guys, I just happened to be looking at the interior of the offensive line for that snap, which is why I saw it in real time. Lucky me. But you see that if another media member, if another casual observer, if a fan in the stands, if a TV broadcaster is not looking at that nuance of the play and says, was that designed or did Jayden just decide to take off because he thought he saw something? That shows you that that team is executing that designed run very, very well, and they're not tipping it too early. Scrambling in situational drills. I've told you guys before, I hate seeing quarterbacks run in training camp, in practices. However, there's an exception to this, and that is situational 11-on-11 football. I hate seeing quarterbacks scramble in 7-on-7s, all that kind of stuff. But I've never seen them do it against air, which would be just insane to me. But seeing them do it 11-11 football, situational football, that's completely different. Jayden Daniels did that a couple of times that I witnessed, and both those decisions for him to run were very good decisions, and he honestly had space to do it in. So again, very smart. One of those runs, he actually ended up running out of bounds. The next one, he got two-hand touched. Ideally, you like to see him get down, right? But I think in this situation, you're okay with your quarterback not sliding, going to the ground on purpose. Just take the two-hand touch and be down, right? But then you move on to the next part of this concept that Dan Quinn was talking about, and that is comfort running the system. And we've been talking about Jayden Daniels looking comfortable on the practice field with the Washington Commanders, with his teammates and his coaches, really since day one. He has looked like he belongs on an NFL practice field. There were hurry-up situations in the situational 11-on-11s. He was in command, in control. It didn't look panicked. It looked very controlled, very much under control. The anticipation, again, there was another route, which, again, I can't describe fully to you guys because we don't want to tip the Washington Commanders' hands to opponents that are going to potentially hear this in the future. But there was a route, I'll just tell you, started off moving right, receiver ends up breaking left, and at the end, and the throw was made with anticipation. Now, it was a little bit high. It did deflect off the receiver's hand, and it did end up getting intercepted. In fact, if you look at the Washington Commanders social media feed, you'll see a tipped pass that Jeremy Chin ends up coming down with. It was that pass. So was it a perfect play? No, not at all. But when you look at familiarity, comfort running the system, Jayden Daniels knew exactly where to go with the ball. His receiver knew exactly where to be with the play design, with what they were trying to do in the scheme. And at the end of the day, look, people subscribe to different parts of this whole thing. The ball hit the receiver in the hands. Some people say if it hits you in the hands, you got to make that catch. Other people will say, yeah, it hit him in the hands, but he hit him in the hands because he had to stretch out for it to hit him in the hands, so it's on the quarterback. Whatever you want to say, the offense at the end of the day is going to go back in the tape room and say, this is an interception, and that's bad. So I think we can all agree there. So Jayden Daniels certainly checked a lot of blocks on day one, running the first team offense and what Coach Quinn says he's looking for in a starter. But don't be surprised, guys, if Marcus Mariota still starts the first preseason game of the season, even the second preseason game of the season. The Washington Commanders really have no reason to rush Jayden Daniels out there. As you can see, he's getting reps with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Luke McCaffrey, De'Ami Brown, Zach Ertz, all these guys. So is Marcus Mariota. They're both getting really healthy reps with all of these players, all the way up and down. You're seeing Jayden Daniels throw to Bryson Tremaine, a practice squad receiver. You're seeing Marcus Mariota throw to Bryson Tremaine. So they're all getting valuable reps. Who starts the preseason game is really more of a novelty than anything, especially with those joint practices. They're going to get a lot of work against the starting defenses, all these other things. So I'm just preparing you because I would not be surprised to see Marcus Mariota start the first or even the first 2 preseason games of the season. I do think probably preseason game 3, you see Jayden start the game on the field, get him that starting kind of feel before you hit the regular season. But just kind of forewarning that technically right now there are no starters. We've heard Coach Quinn kind of harp on that before. I think we still sit there. So that's kind of where we are with Jayden Daniels with 2 more days of practice this week. Very exciting day out there in Ashburn. Rookie second-rounder defensive tackle Johnny Newton is on the road to recovery, and that's not just coming from what Coach Quinn said on Tuesday, but it's from what I saw as well. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you by Game Time, and Game Time makes you getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. In fact, prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time literally takes the guesswork out of buying your NBA tickets. Are you in Dallas and want to go see Game 3 between the Mavericks and the Boston Celtics? Well, you can do so for as little as $429. There is a watch party happening inside TD Garden in Boston on Wednesday night that you can attend for as little as $112. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app, create your account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listen, your first view today and every day. Everydayers, thank you once again for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Make sure you come back tomorrow. We're going to have even more notes from practice. We'll have even more player interviews coming off the field. Right now, I am scheduled to have a conversation with Jahan Dotson, maybe one-on-one, maybe in a group. I'm not selfish. I don't mind if other people get involved, but I did talk to Jahan. We set it up for tomorrow after practice. So Jahan Dotson should be coming through along with whoever else we happen to run into coming off the practice field. In the meantime, are you watching ESPN or Fox all day? Realize you got to turn it down when all the screaming starts, but really, you just want the straight news, the straight opinion, and the straight answers. Well, check out Locked On Sports Today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming and the other mess. It's free, again, on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rookie defensive tackle Johnny Newton, Jer'Zhan Newton from the Illinois Fighting Illini. Real quick recap, just in case you forgot or you missed that bit of news. Johnny Newton did have a foot injury that he was playing through last season for the Fighting Illini at the University of Illinois. It was known. He had surgery on it in January, was able to heal, was able to basically come back and convince NFL teams like, hey, I'm going to be fine. Was drafted eventually in the second round by the Washington Commanders. Once he got to Ashburn, once he got with the team, it was discovered that he had another similar type foot injury that needed a similar type procedure on his other foot. So this isn't the same foot, and the injuries are apparently not necessarily connected. He's since had that procedure and is on the road to recovery. Here's Coach Quinn himself on Tuesday on the progress Johnny Newton is making.
Yes, so Johnny's had the procedure done on his foot. He's hitting all the markers that he's supposed to hit. He's able to do light working out, and then we'll keep progressing him all the way up until training camp. But no decisions, been made yet in terms of the start of camp or not. So we'll take that kind of week by week as it's going. But he's hitting all the right markers.
All right, so obviously some good news there from Johnny Newton, or about Johnny Newton from Coach Dan Quinn. But before Coach Quinn was even asked about that, he comes up to the podium and talks to us and everything else. We see players walking, getting ready to go to the practice field, getting warmed up, doing those things. Johnny Newton was one of the players that came walking out. He does have a boot on that surgically repaired foot. He's doing a lot of bike work during the practices. He can't participate in all the drills and all that stuff, but you can tell he's kind of plugged in as much as he can be from his perch and from taking the mental reps and all those things. But the thing that really stood out to me, and again, and full disclosure here, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physical therapist, and I've never had foot surgery, right? So put all that in there for a grain of salt, but he's walking really well. There's no limp. There's no hesitation. And I think that's really, it's not so much the limp, but what I was looking for is there a tentativeness to his gaits, right? When he's walking, is he kind of making sure he's not putting weight on it and all these? He doesn't walk with a crutch or a cane. There's nothing to take weight off it. Just, again, the boot to stabilize it. And obviously that kind of helps disperse the weight a little bit more too. But this is a big dude. And not only is he walking with confidence, walking without tentativeness, without hesitation, but he's doing it up and downhill. Like he's walking up and down these grass hills in Ashburn, Virginia. And what I mean down and back, and again, this could be just me reading too much into it, but I thought it was fairly significant to share it, at least with you guys. He came walking out of the building, down to the practice field, goes down a hill to do it. He ended up walking back up. Don't know why, it doesn't really matter. But he ended up walking back up. Then he walked back down. So whatever he forgot to do, maybe he had to go to the bathroom. I don't know. Maybe he forgot something that he wanted to bring out to the practice field. Whatever it is, if it was something he forgot in the building, if he was still, concerned, or if there was a concern, somebody else could have got it for him. An equipment manager, an assistant coach, an intern, something like that could have gone and gotten it for him. But the bottom line is, got to see him walk up and down these hills multiple times on Tuesday. And, again, it's a small thing, right? It's not a major thing, but I do think it's a good point. It's a good sign to what Coach Quinn says, Johnny Newton on the path to recovery. I think ultimately by the time he gets on the field, this team is going to do it right. They're going to make sure that he's 100% healed. So I just want to share that little tidbit with you. Again, not a drill, not a rep, not a snap, but, still good to see Johnny Newton walking comfortably on that surgically repaired foot. Also fun to see Frankie Luvu in person, in conversation on the practice field. And we talked to Frankie Luvu. So I'm going to share some video of that interview. It starts off with Donna Hopkins asking a question, or Frankie Luvu is going to start by answering a question asked him by Donna Hopkins about the differences between OTAs and minicamp. Yes, I asked a little bit of a clarifying question on that. Just really wanted to hammer home the difference for players between these different phases, because we know from us there's significance there, but what it really means to the players, and then we go on from there. So here's Frankie.
It's just another day of practice for us. Out here getting better, man. Just competing and making each other better. So, today was fun. We heard a lot of noise, a lot of energy going on, and that's how it's supposed to be. Like DQ said, every day, man. So the moment we're having fun, that's how we're doing our jobs and just playing football.
That's kind of what I want to ask you about. So we talk about OTAs, minicamp, but is there a real functional difference for the players?
No, it's just yes, it's mandatory minicamp, but to us, man, for me, I can speak for it's just another opportunity to come out here, man, and just build that bond right now, before season, before training camp, and now you heard it out today. So guys will bring the energy, and man, just love it to be out here, man. It's, they paying us this money to do it, so might as well just come out and do it. So yeah,
absolutely. A ton of former players on the staff. What has that done for you personally, and have you ever been on a staff with a staff that has so many former players?
Oh man, I think this is the first for me. With a lot of knowledge in the room, and being able to pick their minds and taking it on the field, man. I'm blessed. Still learning as a sponge. I'm still trying to get as much information as I can to better myself as a player, and moving forward. Yeah.
Hey Frankie, could you talk about just what you're seeing out of your group so far through the OTAs and just today too?
Yeah. You talking about position-wise or just?
Yes.
Yeah, man. They say we're the leaders of the defense, able to communicate. Whit talks about the chatty defense, and that's what we're trying to make it be. Go out there, bring the energy, and every play, like it's your last. So, the group we have, man, we got good guys that just come in and buy in and get ready to work.
Frankie, last year you had Bryce Young, obviously a young quarterback. This year you got Jayden Daniels. Does that put a little bit more pressure on you guys as a defense in your experience?
No, man. We got the rookie in, man, and he's been a pro since he stepped in. Dude's in the building like at 5, hitting his workout, meeting with the coaches, and guys just walking in. So if that don't say something, man, speak volume to me. So seeing the kid do that, so heading into a game, man, no doubt that I know he's gonna do his thing.
So some good news on the Johnny Newton front, some good things to hear out of linebacker Frankie Luvu. And next we're going to hear from safety Darrick Forrest, who is pretty happy about what he and the defense was able to accomplish on Tuesday and is liking the speed and the energy of the new defense. That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders. We just talked about it a second ago, but Darrick Forrest stopped and had a very brief conversation, literally only about a minute long, that you're going to hear here. But we start off with Donna Hopkins again, letting the legend lead off the interviews here today on Tuesday. Donna Hopkins asked him what he felt like in entering into the mandatory minicamp versus OTAs, and then we go from there. So here is Defo.
It was an exciting day. Defense flying around. We made a lot of plays, and we created a lot of turnovers, man. So we got going, watch the film, see if we played as fixture we went to, and then just make corrections from there.
What do you like about what you're seeing defensively wise right now? I mean, you're learning something new yourself.
Mm-hmm. I would just say that I like the way that we're flying around. It's something that, it's just contagious, the energy, making plays and just kicking ass.
How different does kind of the scheme feel from last year?
I would just say that it feels a lot more, how can I explain this? I would say it's more technical. Everything is down to a cue, everybody has their job description and going out there and get it done every play.
And they try to simplify things, though, at the same time?
I wouldn't even say simplify things, but just make sure that everybody knows exactly what they're doing. And then if something changes, then they'll make the correction.
All right. Always good to hear from Darrick Forrest. Again, yeah, really good dude in the locker room, really talented player on the field. Happy to see him healthy and excited for the opportunities to come on the practice field on Tuesday. A lot of diversification. There was Quan Martin and Jeremy Chin out there. There was Percy Butler and Quan Martin out there. There was Defo and Jeremy Chin. Like, there's just every combination you think of under the sun. This coaching staff is really doing all of the work they can to just figure out which combination is really going to be the most productive for the defense. Moving on to a different position, moving on to a different group altogether, special teams. Dan Quinn was asked about the kicking competition. Some kickers have been brought in to work out or will be coming in to work out as the Washington Commanders work through this kicker situation. Quinn said, quote, I think at the top of it, the competition part of it, we will keep digging in over the next few days. And certainly as we are preparing into camp, not just there, but all over, we will include kicker Lucas Haversek over the next couple of days as well, end quote. The reports are that Lucas Haversek, who does have some NFL kicking experience, will be at the mandatory minicamp on Wednesday and Thursday. So we'll get to see some kicking competitions between he and the current kicker, Jake Bates, the uber popular USFL UFL kicker who rolled his ankle in the playoff game that his team was eliminated in, also missed a couple of kicks or one or two kicks in that playoff game. Ultimately finished his USFL season only making 75% of his kicks. So that's not necessarily the biggest vote of confidence, but there are reports that they're at least in conversations with potentially bringing him in either for maybe the last day of the minicamp or maybe training camp if that ankle is holding up. So news on the kicking front, we'll continue to monitor that as well. Again, one of the questions we want to ask at the end of this minicamp or be able to have the answers for rather at the end of this minicamp is who the starting left tackle is or who the favorite is. Right now, I guess you would give the tip of the cap to probably Cornelius Lucas. Both Cornelius Lucas and Brandon Coleman got first team reps at left tackle on Tuesday, but Cornelius Lucas had more, right? So that's pretty much the best thing you say. Again, no pads, no live pass rush, no full contact, nothing like that. So it's really kind of hard to see. But I can tell you that one, Cornelius Lucas, gigantic human being, confirmed. Every time you see him, it's confirmed. But it's every time you see him, it's still, you're like, man, that is a gigantic human being. Brandon Coleman certainly looks athletic, certainly looks the part of a young offensive tackle, but not doing anything that stands out as like, oh man, there's no way he can have this job. So I think that's a competition, guys, that might go down to as close to the wire as you possibly can. And the New York Giants under offensive line coach Bobby Johnson last year went down to the wire so much in determining who their starting five would be that people in the media and the fan base actually starting to get frustrated with the coaching staff for not announcing their starting five. So this might be one of those battles that goes pretty deep into training camp, but we'll continue to monitor that and as many things as we can. Washington Commanders related insiders, you are getting practice footage from Tuesday, so be on the lookout from that. If you want to begin in on that fun and all the other stuff going on with the insider program, again, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to get started on that today. Also, don't forget to check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 live streaming sports channel on YouTube. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or your first view today and every day. Everydayers, thank you for blessing me with your attendance every single day. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I'll see you next time right back here for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.